Hey everyone, today I thought we'd discuss the likely upcoming content for the 6th year of Dead by Daylight, primarily focusing on the possible chapters we could get and what content would be included with those chapters. Right off, one thing that a lot of people are interested in when it comes to Dead by Daylight chapters is the possible licenses that could come to the game. As of the past 5 years, there's not been a clear pattern for licenses or their releases, with some years having a high density of licenses and others, such as year 5 that just passed, had very little. This was touched on by Behavior in the anniversary stream to be down to them wanting to create their own chapters, but also that licenses take a bit more back and forth as they're using someone else's property, which makes sense. With that said, the first question you might have is, are we getting any more licenses aside Resident Evil for year 6? Especially as Resident Evil has been a pretty big chapter, with a new and very detailed map, but also multiple survivors as well as a new killer. Now, sure, last time we had a situation like this was around the release of Stranger Things, which is widely agreed to be the period of some of the best content, with Curse Legacy following on, which I would personally argue to be the best original chapter that Behavior has made, with the only downside of it being the map potentially. This gives me some faith that the upcoming content could be pretty good. Also, from recent questionnaires that asked the community about the licenses they might like in game, you could choose from 4 different categories with a list of different possible licenses. We know this list is kinda reliable, at least because Resident Evil has been brought to the game now, but the fact they are actually asking us does mean there are plans for more licenses to come. Out of this list, there's clearly some that are very unlikely, as many of them just tonally don't fit with the game, but there's some perfectly valid ones in there like Alien, Candyman, Hellraiser, The Walking Dead, The Last of Us, Until Dawn. That's just me though. I don't know much about the animes in there, so maybe someone in the comments can share a good idea on which one of these are valid for a chapter. Same goes for the comics. Generally for licenses though, I've highlighted these as primarily the licenses that have been acquired have been pretty big ones, with not many less popular franchises and such being picked up. But again, that could easily change in this coming year. Candyman is a name that's come up a lot. I'm sure you've heard the endless amount of theory videos talking about Candyman. I get the feeling that this license has been secured for a while, but it's been repeatedly delayed due to COVID and could possibly explain the slightly rougher release for both A Binding of Kin and All Kill. Overall though, I think the trajectory for this year is going to be more of a 50-50 split, and I can see them releasing another license around Christmas for the December release. I think it is most likely Candyman, however it could reasonably be any of the names on that questionnaire list, or the whole thing is just meant as a distraction and for the purpose of hype, which is also totally possible, although I don't think they'd do that. So, are there any original chapters that are very likely to come? I think a vampire killer is almost guaranteed. Potentially it's even this dude that we see the Observer meet in the Tome 7 cutscene, where he's seen drinking from a chalice of blood. I would like if we got a castle map or some kind of castle interior with a gothic look to it, as that's some pretty untapped territory so far for DBD. I think a vampire chapter is highly possible though, and it makes sense for it to be original over them paying for a licensed vampire. They may as well just do their own and put their own spin on it. Also, the fact that this has been shown in the lore prior to its potential release is promising, as we know both Blight and Elodie were referenced in the lore prior to their release. Elodie, I believe, was mentioned a whole year before she actually came out within the lore, so very high possibility of an original vampire chapter. One thing I think is worth keeping an eye on is the fact that zombies got added with the Resident Evil chapter, and really, for Dead by Daylight we haven't had any zombie related characters really. The closest being Bill, who again has just gotten his own tome, the first tome to be licensed. On this note, considering licenses getting added too, I also think it's highly possible we get some licenses expanded, and potentially some more of the licensed maps reworked as they were in the Realm Beyond updates. Haddonfield is the map that needs it the most. I hope it gets reworked, but I assume there's permissions they need to get and such before it happens, but I hope it does. I honestly don't think it's too far-fetched to say that we might get a Walking Dead chapter or paragraph. That was one of the properties in that list. I say paragraph because I personally don't think any of the characters would work too well as killers, to be honest. However, I think a paragraph a bit like Ashes is very possible, where someone like Rick Grimes is added by himself. This is also fairly possible, I think, as The Walking Dead is finally ending, so there's a good chance that they'll want as much hype as possible for that final season. The bigger possibility in terms of this though is a similar thing that was done with Crypt TV, which was legendary skins for current characters. We know already that there's going to be expansions with legendary characters for Resident Evil, most likely Chris and Claire Redfield, as well as Jonathan Byers from Stranger Things. The other zombie-related property mentioned on that list that has some potential is The Last of Us. The only issue with this being that it is a PlayStation exclusive, and of course Dead by Daylight is not a PlayStation exclusive game. There's also Until Dawn, but the same goes for that, it's exclusive to PlayStation. However, I honestly don't think either are fully out of the picture, especially as Until Dawn is fairly old now and likely isn't getting any sequels, and The Last of Us seems to have ended. Both Alien and Hellraiser I think are also very possible, again simply because they're some of the more well-known and popular properties on this list, and it just seems the most likely that behavior would go with the ones that are going to make the most people happy. Also, they are both tonally pretty fitting. There's a pretty big possibility also, based on last year, that we're going to get some more killer reworks. I can see this happening for characters that are quite outdated at this point, like Trapper. Potentially they'll even go with a trapping theme and do Trapper as well as Pig. These changes could be anything from full power reworks or additions to simple changes, like the boost they gave to Wraith's cloaked movement speed and adjustments to add-ons for other characters for balancing and such. In terms of maps we can expect, aside that of licensed maps, which will likely just be from the same thing that the respective licensed characters are from, the devs did also announce during the 5th anniversary stream that there was a possibility that they may revisit previous chapters to add new maps. This is just a possibility though, but I personally find it a little strange that they would even bother mentioning this unless they at least had something in mind for the direction they would go in for a revisit. I think the most likely chapter to be revisited for a new map is probably All Kill, which I would argue is the most memorable of the 3 chapters that were original in Year 5, mostly for its unique aesthetic. For both Blight and Twins, they had no set area where they appear really throughout the lore. Blight's trailers were primarily set around Father Campbell's chapel, and Twins I think were in Shelter Woods in theirs. Twins in their lore are also running or traveling for much of the time, so there's no set location really. The best route for this, and something that's been fairly highly requested, is a Neon City map to accompany Yunjin and the Trickster. We get a little glimpse of this in the background of the home screen, so I think it's possible. Generally, All Kill is just the most tonally distinct one we got throughout Year 5, so again, I think this is the most likely possibility for a chapter to be revisited and a map added. For reworks though, I think Haddonfield is the priority, and then I believe it's just Swamp and Red Forest until everything has been updated. They also confirmed they will be working on new maps too again, so I'd assume this means a 50-50 split-ish of reworks and new maps, which I'm happy with personally. So this is my little prediction graphic for what I think is likely to come. This is just speculation of course, and as always, please do drop your own predictions and ideas in the comments. I'd be interested to see what you think. Thanks, and goodbye.